Hi, everybody, and thank you for joining us at the Microsoft Power BI UK user group. I'm your host, Leon Gordon, and as always, we're back with another riveting session to allow us to come together as a community to learn more about Microsoft Power BI. I hope you've all been keeping well, and for those of you that do celebrate Easter, I hope you enjoyed the Easter holidays. So please do let us know as well where around the world you're joining us from. In today's session, as I'm sure you're aware, we're going to be joined by Microsoft MVP Treb Gatte, and today we're going to take a look at what are Power BI goals and why should I use them. Now, Treb is a business intelligence expert with 24 years worth of experience, so very knowledgeable on the Microsoft stack. And we were talking prior to going live around his tenure as an MVP, which is going on for quite a number of years now. So we're very, very excited to have Treb with us. Prior to becoming the CEO of Marquee Insights, he worked in leadership positions at Microsoft, Starbucks, and Wachovia, who were previously known as Wells Fargo. As I mentioned, he's been a recognized Microsoft Data Platform MVP, and Treb lives in the Seattle area and currently holds an MBA from Wake Forest University. So with that being said, I'll just hand you over to Treb for his session.
Good afternoon, good morning, good evening to everyone, and hopefully you're going to get great value out of this session. I'm very excited to be here to talk about Power BI goals. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and do my intro. So again, Marquee Insights, we're based in the Seattle area. We do a lot of work with executives to get an understanding of how to make better decisions within their organization using smarter data provided by Power BI. And as you saw my background here, I've been doing this a while. I actually was a BI PM working with this project called Crescent way back when Power BI was just a lab experiment within Microsoft. So I've been doing this quite a while. Now, one of the things we're going to talk about 4 areas today with Power BI goals. So first, I'm going to introduce them. Why do we need this new functionality? What precipitated this need for Microsoft to address? We're also going to go through and look at some scorecard examples. So these are all real-world examples from various companies around the world to give you an idea of what we're talking about here when we're talking about goals in particular, because they're different from a dashboard and they're different from a report. And then we're going to go through a step-by-step demo where I'm going to show you how to build out a scorecard, how to build out goals, all the various nuances that you need to take into account. And hopefully what I will leave you with is that the challenge with Power BI goals is not the mechanics. I think they've done a very good job of keeping the mechanics fairly clean. I think it's more of a question of what is it that you actually want to show your end user, which I think is the case with any reporting solution, but I think more so with Power BI goals than what we've had before. So that said, let's go ahead and go into them. And again, what is Power BI goals and why should I care? You know, and the reality is we've made creating reports very, very, very easy. And as such, we have so many of them that we have difficulty finding the answers we're looking for, because at the end of the day, what a person is looking for is an answer to a question that they have, not yet another report. And we're seeing people now averaging 50 to 100 reports per person. If you have an average of 7 visuals per report and you have 100, that's 700 places to look for an answer. So this is a bit of a challenge. Now, the other thing too about reports is that they tend to be backwards looking about what have we done. And so sometimes it's very hard to get context as to, well, what are we shooting for here? And so that was really the need that goals started off with, is it's really about where are we going as an organization? And so one of the things you're going to see as I show you examples of this is that these may not be the normal metrics that you are tracking within your reports today. They're at a much higher level. They tend to be standardized in some fashion amongst industries. So for example, the customer service scorecard I'm going to show you, these metrics are very common for any customer service organization that's out there. And so I think this is one of the other aspects about it, is that it helps you really bring that conversation up to how can we be better as an organization. Now, having momentary problem with PowerPoint here. Now, these can be metrics, and the good thing about this is that if you do have a metric, they have provided 3 different ways to enable Power BI goals. One of the early feedback items was it was a fairly heavy lift to tie a Power BI goal to a report, which is definitely one of the ways that you can do it. And within a goal, you have both a target value and you have an actual value. So each of these can each be tied to a report. However, when I'm getting started, I may not be certain that what I'm tracking is actually what I need to be tracking. And as such, they did give us a way to manually enter the data on a recurring basis so that we can test out, is this really what we need to be monitoring as an organization? Is this really the number, the goal that we need to drive our decision making? But having the ability to not only have what I'm shooting for and how I'm doing against it is a very powerful combination. But wait, there's more. So the other aspect that you need to be aware of is, well, where were we last week? Where were we last period? And so not only can you compare actual to targets, but you can also look at a historical view as to how have we progressed over time. Because if I'm yellow this week, was I yellow last week, red last week, green last week? That matters a lot to the decision that I need to make this week. And one of the features of Power BI goals that I think is really the secret sauce of the whole product is something called check-ins. Now, all of us working hybrid, remote, in the office, we have had a huge challenge trying to communicate where are we on something. And so one of the feedback items that we saw in the private preview is that customers love the check-in feature because this is where they're actually replacing their status reporting functionality that they have today. Many of you are probably doing status via PowerPoint decks, Word documents, emails. There's a plethora of solutions out there, but no holistic way to see exactly where we are. If you look at Power BI goals, then not only do you have what I'm working toward and how am I doing against that metric, but I can also add the context via commentary through check-ins as to why we are where we are. So that three-way view of progress is really a very powerful combination. Thankfully, one of the things that they did in the check-in feature is they did not limit us to like 256 characters, like is very common in other products where you can only just put like a news line, if you will. I've actually pasted 5 pages of text into a check-in and it took it no issue. You can format it nicely. In fact, I've got clients that basically their first check-in gives you the overall context as to why are we tracking this? What's the business problem that we needed? A lot of that background information that gets lost sometimes in a SharePoint folder somewhere amongst a bunch of documents. Now it's all in one place that you can scroll back through and see the journey that this goal went through. One of the other areas, the Israeli team that develops the mobile client, I think did an outstanding job with mobile goals. In fact, it's more beautiful, I think, on the mobile client than it is in the web at the moment. I'll show you a quick video here. It really is beautiful. I mean, they've got all these nice gradients and whatnot, but here I can have at my fingertips where we are with status. What we're seeing too is people are now checking in more often. It's not, well, let's wait till the weekly status meeting to talk about this. Let's do daily check-ins. Let's do multiple check-ins a day. And because again, I'm not really reporting status, I'm reporting where are we, because we're having a conversation around this goal. And realistically, your path to greatness is really being able to respond intelligently to these types of opportunities and threats as they occur immediately. And so using goals to do that really allows that conversation to happen more fluidly without having to resort to a Teams chat that scrolls on without context or gets lost in email. So again, I think it's a very powerful feature. All right, I'm going to pause for a minute. Are there any questions in the chat? Good so far. Okay, just thought I would check.
Thank you.
Okay. So let's talk about some examples. Now, again, these are real world examples that we have seen out there. And the first one I'm going to show you is a customer service scorecard. Now, this particular organization, they run a help desk operation for both internal and external constituents, if you will. So think about if you have a help desk for your internal IT, that would be part of their function. But they also run the external client help desk. So they have to look at this from various perspectives. And one of the things about goals is that you have up to 5, sorry, my slides, I advanced my slides before I was ready. Let's go back one. One of the things you'll notice is that you can have hierarchy within your goals. So you can have goals and sub-goals, and you can have up to 5 levels of this. And this helps you break it down based on what it is that you're trying to track. Now, if you notice, the scorecard at the top here says the 2022 Customer Care Scorecard. This is something that we're seeing quite often, is that people are setting scorecards up on a fiscal year basis because that's really how they track everything. Within the scorecard itself, they're breaking down the goals usually by some time frame, and each level may have a different organizing principle. Currently, goals do not roll up. This is something they've announced on their roadmap. It will be coming at some point. I don't think it's as big an issue for many as it would seem, because again, if I'm organizing each level differently, a roll-up may not make sense. So, for example, we've got customer and we've got employees, so both external and internal. Then when we look at things like customer satisfaction score, which some people would call, in marketing, it would be an NPS score. There's other types of metrics that are similar to this. One of the other lessons learned in setting up scorecards is it's one thing to track a metric like customer satisfaction score. One of the challenges that they had is they had a very high satisfaction scores, like 94%. Awesome. And then I asked the question, so how do you gather whether or not they're satisfied? And they said, oh, well, we send a post engagement survey. And then I said, well, how many people respond to the survey? They said 2%. That's not exactly a significant amount of responses. So one of the things that they actually added to this was their survey response rate as a metric, so that you can use this to better gauge, am I actually tracking the number I think I'm tracking? So whenever you're setting up goals, one of the things that you should consider is, how do I ensure that what I'm tracking is of quality enough to make a decision on? Otherwise, without that context, you're going to develop trust issues over time, where somebody's going to make a decision based on data that they saw there, and it may not have been significant enough, in which case they will stop trusting it, and it becomes a vicious cycle. So again, in your design, think about, how do I not only track the item I need to track, but how do I verify that it's a quality number as well? And having those two side by side would be extremely powerful. And again, they are breaking this down even further, so that it could be by various teams. We've had things go down to level 4 where it's by region. So really, and they're multinational, so they have operations in Europe, North America, Asia, and whatnot. And you're seeing those breakdowns. In fact, you can get, like I said, you can go down to 5 levels, and they're going to wind up being at 5 levels here. The next one I'm going to show you is a manufacturing scorecard. So Bill here is he is over a manufacturing firm in right outside of Atlanta here in the United States, and he basically lost it one night. He was very frustrated about a lot of things. We were having dinner, and he said, why does it take me 3 days to get a simple answer? There are few things that I need to know, and I need to know them now, because when the board asks, I don't have time to wait for somebody to go manually generate a report. Even if it's easy in Power BI, somebody still has to run off and interrupt what they're doing to get me that answer. Again, he needs an answer, not yet another report. So we sat down with he and the CFO and a few others and said, okay, what is it that you're tracking on a daily, weekly, monthly basis? And he said, these are the conversations we're having. And I thought that was a very interesting way to put it, because again, he's not tracking metrics, he's not tracking reports, he's tracking conversations, because it's the social nature of what he does. And so what does he care about? Well, he and the CFO care about margin and revenue. So everything here is being fed from the finance team and from the sales team as to where are we from a business cash flow perspective. Forecast next quarter revenue. Well, this is based off information from sales and then routed through finance. Again, it's a very interesting conversation. They actually had stuff, they were impacted by the Suez Canal blockage back when that ship got stuck. They were at the point where they were days away from having to stop operations because they were running out of product to use for their manufacturing processes. So one of the things that they did, they actually subscribed to this service that tells them exactly where their shipment is and the exact ship and the exact location worldwide. It's amazing the amount of data that's out there. But now they can see, do I have any supply chain incidents? How far out is it? What can we do to resolve this issue before it becomes a real problem for us? They also internally, they do time tracking for various reasons. So they started a productivity index. How much time are we actually spending on stuff that's driving the organization forward, as opposed to keeping the lights on type, activities like weekly status meetings and such. So they had a target for this of 80%, and well, in this one it said 100%. I think that was before we adjusted it, but they were tracking at 77%. So there were some opportunities there. Customer NPS, how happy of our customers, employee engagement. If you're familiar with Microsoft Viva, this is a metric that you can actually derive from the information they give you in Viva Insights. And then under here, which you can't really see, is safety incidents, because they were having, this was one of their quarterly goals, was to reduce safety issues that they were having in the manufacturing. So it became a top line item for the CEO, for the whole C-level. But again, this is different. This is not a deck. This is not reports. This is basically top of the house. Here are the conversations I'm having. Here's what I care about. As data professionals, we're really not used to working at this level. Not many of us get the opportunity to do that. And in my mind, if you were just starting with Power BI today, I would suggest actually starting with Power BI goals and working your way down, because each of these goals can be linked to a report. I think this is a much more effective way to navigate down into the details than it is to simply start with a dashboard or a collection of reports and then try to work your way through it. Also note, you're not limited to one scorecard. You can have as many as you want. So we have a client in Canada who is rolling out employee level, team level, department level, enterprise level scorecards. Scorecards everywhere. And it makes for a very interesting situation to go through. So just to show you the hierarchy, this is another one. This was a sales organization where they were looking at revenue, subscriptions based on recurring type. And they, again, notice their organization was quarterly. So they did fiscal year, then quarterly underneath that. And then based on the numbers, they may have had region, and then they had city because of the type of thing that they were selling. And this made sense for that type of organization. So again, you can look at this information. We'll go through the rest of the UI here when I go through the setup to show you what this is all about. And I also want to talk about the status indicators, because there's been some changes here as to how we treat those compared to how we do it in reporting today. All right, let's go ahead. I'm going to go over to my demo here, and I'm going to get out of, so we're going to go through creating a scorecard, creating goals. How do I connect it to data? How do I update the settings? So there's a bunch of settings in here you may want to consider. Status rules. Okay, this sounds interesting. We're going to talk about how do I automate this, and then check-ins. And then we're also going to look at Power Automate, because there are a number of Power Automate actions that are available for you to use with goals. All right, before I go into my demo, how are we doing on questions? We're still good?
Yeah, we're fine for the moment, Treb.
Excellent. All right, so here I'm going to show you initially this particular scorecard. So if you are on your home page, excuse me. So here I'm on my home page in Power BI. You'll notice the little trophy that's here on the side. If you click that, this will give you the goals hub, which shows you the recommended goals. So these are goals, my understanding based on what we've worked through, the logic behind this changed a few times during the private preview, but currently this is based on goals that you own and that are fairly active. So this is where this is showing up. I think there's still some room for improvement here. At the bottom, you have recent favorites. You can favorite a scorecard like this. You can say shared with me or all scorecards. So in this case, I'm going to go to my marathon prep. I've been joking that, for me, this would be a stretch goal because I have gained quite a bit of weight during COVID lockdowns. However, my cheesecake baking abilities are amazing, which is part of the problem. So if I were going to run a marathon today, it would be a bit of a challenge. But let's break this down. And what I did here is I used an OKR approach. Now, if you're not familiar with OKRs, these are objectives and key results. This is a methodology that originated originally at Intel. Gentleman there by the name of John Doerr really adopted this. He took it to heart. He also became one of the original investors for a little company called Google. And since then, OKRs have basically taken off, and they have taken over the tech world. You know, Microsoft, Amazon, all the big ones use it. COVID actually drove OKRs out into the rest of the industries, because one of the things that they find is, again, we need a way to track that conversation, and OKRs are a way to break it down in a way that makes sense. And goals help you do a light shift into this methodology. Now, Microsoft has gone all in. They bought a company called Ally.io. Vestry, I think that's his name. They have a great product. I've worked with it before. They're more of a more advanced implementation of OKRs. So for a lot of companies who aren't sure yet if it's for them, Power BI goals are a great way to do that. And this is one way that you can structure it. So here we have a yearly goal. We have a quarterly objective. And then in order to accomplish that objective, I've got key results that I have to do on a weekly basis in order to ensure that I meet, you know, and again, these roll up. So in this case, I've got, you know, I want to run a 26-mile marathon. So I'm going to take all year to get ready for this. And my first quarter is I'm going to try to run 3 miles. And in order to do that, I need to run 4 times a week. I need to average 30 minutes a run, and I need to run an average of 3 miles distance. Now notice these are complementary but reinforcing key results. That's part of the design of this. And so again, I'm tracking status, I'm tracking the value of where we are target versus actual, the trend, due dates, and then check-ins here. So if I were to go in here, I can click the check-in, I can see how we're doing, I can scroll down, and I can see all the values. Now I can see where I've got comments. So here, we've got, kind of fallen off here. And I ran around the neighborhood 5 times. Yeah, okay. And, you know, again, this helps people have that conversation around tracking. The scorecard itself, you have your title. These are actually push button filters. And depending on how you define your statuses, you will see these cards up here. And you can control click and select multiples, which is something that I think a lot of people aren't aware. But if I'm behind and I'm at risk, these are really the 2 things that I'm going to want to look at to begin with, because these indicate that there's some issue. So let's go through. I'm going to go through creating a scorecard here. So I'm going to go back to my goals. You can do it from here. You can also do it from a workspace, and either way will work. But here, there's a nice big yellow button. We click that. I can give my scorecard a name. So I'm going to call this Project London. We've seen people do scorecards for M&A type activities. I mean, you can use it for anything. With all of the latest announcements around sensitivity labels, you can now apply those to scorecards, which is awesome. If you have a workspace to put it in, you can designate that. Otherwise, you can create one here as well. So I'm going to go ahead and create it here. So the first thing this thing is going to do is prompt me for a goal. So this line item, so I'm going to say just, you know, goal 1, owners. So these are the people responsible for the outcome of this goal. You can have up to 5 of them. So if I wanted to add Ginger here, and I could add Brian, let's see, not him, and then I could add Naomi. So it could be that these are, you know, based on your organizational structure, it could be IT, marketing, sales, you know, from the various areas that are represented as stakeholders there. And again, you can have 5 of them. For current and target, you could either enter a value. So if I wanted to say 3, and then say, oh, I'm going to say that this is a whole number because maybe we're tracking, you know, new customers or something. So how about if I just make it that? Let's do new customers. If I can spell today, it'd be dangerous. There we go. and maybe our target is 10. We're currently at 3. Over here for status, again, I could format these here. It'll format both. And then for status, I have a number of these that I can do. We'll talk about status rules in a moment. And then you have a start date and an end date for this. So in this case, I'm going to say, tell you what, let me just use the picker. Sometimes it's easier if I use the interface. You can type it in, just if you get off a bit, it doesn't like it. I'm just going to use today's date, and then we'll go to the end of June here. All right, and then at this point, I can go ahead and click Save. And I have a new goal, I have a new scorecard, I can start using it. How do we make this, though, a little bit more effective? How do we really take it to the next level? Well, the first thing that you can do is maybe these statuses just don't do it for us. This is not the language we use, whatnot. And one of the interesting behaviors that we've seen is we've actually seen the nature of red, yellow, green indicators change a bit. One of the challenges that we encountered through the lockdowns is that executives were not very clear on what was expected of them. And so what we really wanted to do was use these indicators as a way to say, we need you to engage with the team because there's a serious issue. We need you to enable the team to unblock them so they can solve their own issue, or we're simply informing you of the latest information. Now, why was that significant? Well, it's consistent across every scorecard. And that's a huge thing because today, when we have red, yellow, green indicators and we have 50 reports, I doubt seriously, unless you've really stuck to your design from the beginning, that every red, every yellow, every green means the same thing consistently. Because we're always reporting the health of something to other people, as opposed to what is it we want you to do instead because of this situation. It flips the script a bit. And so in order to do this, what I can do is I can click my gear here when I'm in edit mode on the scorecard, go over to statuses, and here I can actually edit these. So maybe I'm not going to use overdue. And for behind, again, I need them to engage directly. So I'm going to call it engage. I can actually change the color. So we have a color picker here. You can pick which one you want. For this one, I'm going to enable, because again, maybe I just need an approval for a PO or something. And then here, we're just going to call it inform. And again, the beauty of this is that no matter what, they understand what is needed of them when they're looking at this information without having to ping me at 10 p.m. because they happen to be looking at the scorecard or whatever. Make your life easier, folks. Make it clear to the end user and they stop bugging you about this stuff. You can also add statuses. So we can add up to 12. You can have 12 total statuses. Go crazy if you like. And you can reorder them and whatnot. So in this case, if I want inform to be top, helps to click the button. There we go. And then click that one down. So I want that order. Click save. Now, one of the things you'll notice once this closes is that my button bar updated. So we've got inform, enable, engage. So the order in which I put them in here is the order they show up here. If you have 12 of them, they will resize accordingly. They will show up on mobile as well. And then when I go into my status here, you will see them show up accordingly. Now, that's a great thing that they've added. The other thing that they added was setup rules, or the status rules. So in these status rules, I have the ability to look at value, date, or value change, or some combination of both. So I could say if my value is greater than or equal to, let's change that to just the number. So if I wanted it to be greater than 4, and then I could say, we're going to say inform. And, the thing is, too, I can also add a condition that says, if the date is on or after or before or on. So I've seen one client who did this where within their quarterly goal, they set up these monthly rules that said, basically, if we're not here by this point in the cycle, we've got a problem. And so, and you can add as many of these rules as you wish. And then if not, I'm going to say engage. I'm going to delete this one just so we can demo this very easily. Click save. And so now by setting this rule, click save, notice it automatically went to red. And if I edit this and change this to 4, not 43, and there it goes. It updates it. That's great. This is great. We're reducing maintenance, because one of the other things that we're seeing scorecards that are averaging anywhere from 35 to 50 goals times the number of scorecards. This could be a lot of maintenance. So how do we reduce the maintenance? So again, one of the things that you can do is now you can tie this information to reports. So in this case, my target's pretty static. I don't really need to have that being dynamically changed, but I do want to connect this to a report. So I've got this lovely sales analytics report from Dynamics that I'm going to use. I go here, and once it comes up, so here I've got my win count. Now, here's the cool thing about this. You can connect to a single value, or if you have a line chart, let's see if I can find one real quick. There we go. So if I was connecting to a line chart like this, let's try one more that actually is working. See, this is killing me because it was working the other day. But what's supposed to happen is when you click on a line chart, you're supposed to get the selector that says, do I connect to one single value, or do I connect to the entire series? The other thing that you can do, and this may drive you actually to use your filter pane a little bit more, is that you can preset these filters. So if I'm looking at current fiscal month, and maybe I want to look at just the true, and then I can connect to this, and this way it'll bring that value in. And so maybe I'm using this as like if you had a dynamic date filter, where we're only looking at current quarter, it would automatically advance every time the report is refreshed. So click save. And so now what's happening is every time that report is refreshed, it will automatically update the goal. The goal will automatically look at the status rule and update the status accordingly. So again, we're getting to this point where, hey, this is pretty cool. We had one person who said, hey, we have a IoT kind of thing going on, and we're doing streaming data. So they set up a real-time streaming data set, put a report on top of it with the auto refresh set every minute, connected that to a goal, set up status rules, voila, it works. Now you have this thing that you could have up in the front of, like if you were at a customer service center and you have something sitting in the front of the room on a big screen, you could be having this thing auto refresh very easily. Again, all built into Power BI right there using goals. But wait, there's more. Again, the secret sauce is, how do we know what's really going on with this? And that's where the check-in comes in. So I'm going to go back to read mode here. So notice now that I've tied this to a report, I've got this little icon. And so if I click the icon, it will actually take me to that report so I can see it directly. So again, it's a great way to use it as a dashboard, but I want to have this check-in feature. And so I'm going to go here and I'm going to say new check-in. Now, if your data is being fed by the report, you won't be able to edit it here. And if you have status rules, you won't be able to change the status. If you're doing it manually, you can, sky's the limit, you can do whatever you want. But down here, I can have, whatever is going on. Wow, let's try typing today. And then I can have, let's see, I've got my Office Ipsum here, which always has some fun stuff in there. Click that, get back to here. It's buzzword bingo, basically. And then maybe I want to make that green, as things are good. And I can't quite change the size yet. That's something that we've asked for, but I can also do bulleted list here. So this is very nice that we can do. And so we're going to run up the flag here. And again, I can have as much in here as I wish. Click save. The other cool thing is you can have multiple check-ins per day, different people doing check-ins. There's all sorts of things that you can do here. And you're creating almost like this Twitter feed of what's going on with this particular goal. Some people are treating their projects as goals, some are operational, some are aspirational, again, organizational goals. But again, it's a conversation at the end of the day. We're having this social experience around this. We have multiple tools out there that try to do this, but I think this is the one that really brings it all together, where the conversations that you might be having in Yammer actually are more effective here, because now I see it within context of the data that I'm presenting. All right. So with that, This, from a goal perspective, is everything. But the other thing that they did is they said, well, these don't really stand alone. We want to have really, really good integration. And so that's where we go to Power Automate. And I don't know how many people within the audience are doing Power Automate today, but they've added all of these functions that are out there just for goals. In fact, I think there are now more for goals than there are for the rest of Power BI. But we have a number of triggers. So imagine now we've got a data refresh for fails for a goal that happens, but if a goal changes, so imagine now I've got my report being scheduled, refreshed, it's feeding the goal status rule triggers, it changes, so something's going on, and now I've got this trigger in Power Automate that I can do more stuff with. So again, we're increasing the rate at which we're having that discussion. We're realizing we either have an opportunity or an issue, and we're able to react faster to it. And so I can tell when the value has changed. I can look at whether someone has added or edited a check-in or changed the owner. Sometimes that happens, or the status changes. From an action perspective, again, I don't have to actually go to powerbi.com to do a check-in. I could have a Power App. I could trigger this from a SharePoint list. I could trigger this from pretty much any other place that I can connect to with Power Automate. I can have a Power Automate button and do it right there on my phone if I wanted to. But the net of it is, they're trying to make it much easier for you to pump data into and out of goals. Because the other thing that they did, and I know when people look at this, they go, well, this is cool and all, but how do I get to this data? And this is one of the things that trips up a lot of people, is they come in here and they will see, so let's see, Project London's down here somewhere. Yeah, so just create it. So notice there's a data set here connected to this scorecard. And if I click on it, you get your nice little, data set portal here, and I can create from scratch. So of course, everybody does this. They go in there and they're like, oh, cool, look, I can see goals. I can see the notes. I've got all the information here. I can see my statuses. I can see the values. And so the first thing that they do is they come over here, they drag name over, and they see nothing. What's up with this? Well, so here's what's going on. If you go back, the data is actually not stored in this goal data set. You got to get it in there. So one of the little tricks that you need to be aware of, so let me go back here, is that when you set up a scorecard, one of the things you want to do is also set up your schedule refresh for this data set. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and manually refresh it. It should take it all of like 5 seconds. But I want to go in here and, just like you would do with anything else, go to settings and set up your schedule refresh. Once you turn that on, what this will do is pull the data from the internal data store where the goals are actually kept and put it here in the reporting. So that now if I go back to this, let's see, I want to refresh. I have data, cool. So now I could do things like, let's look at the body here. We'll drag that over here. Now, one of the things I want to point out is even though you have rich text in the interface, they strip it out automatically in the reporting. However, there's a lot of stuff you could do with this. Imagine I could do sentiment analysis on your check-in to see, is it positive or negative? There's a lot of those other AI functions that we have built into Power BI that could be brought to bear here. And one of the other things that we've actually built is a weekly status check-in dashboard that basically goes out, gets the latest, aggregates all this into a nice looking report. We did this for one of our clients so that when they go into a meeting, it automatically just pulls all this stuff together. Now, the last thing to consider is that if I go into powerbi.com, Power BI Desktop, come on, Windows 11. If you're familiar with composite data sets, you can actually attach to all of these data sets with a composite data set and bring them together. And now you have cross scorecard reporting. Again, may not care about every scorecard, but at least for your key ones, now you can create aggregate reporting. How are we doing?
Fantastic so far, Treb. We do have a couple of questions coming in.
Yes.
The first question coming in from Leah is, do I need a premium license for Power BI goals?
As of today, you do not. It is available both to pro and premium users. The one thing I will say, knowing Microsoft, I don't have any internal knowledge about this, is I would expect them at some point to maybe roll out some features later that are premium only, but there's been no indication they're going to do that anytime soon. I know that right now, this was their Christmas gift to everybody, is they have made it available for Pro today. You do have to have Pro for both consumer and creator. This also impacts you as well for check-ins. So if you were doing a check-in, so if I'm coming in here and I'm doing a check-in, one of the things you'll see in here is there is a permissions model that allows you to add roles. So you could have check-ins, view all, view update, and all. They're going to add some other ones here. You do have to have Pro at least to do this as well.
Okay, fantastic. And our next question is an anonymous question, and they ask, are goals a replacement for KPIs on dashboards or within reports?
Well, it's funny because the KPIs that we have are based on what we have with SSRS way back. And there's a lot of information in it that we don't have, like we don't have the time phase data, we don't have the historical. I think they took a revisit at KPIs and said, yes, you could use this as a replacement. You don't have to, but you can. And the reason I would say you may want to consider it is just simply because of the check-in feature. The fact that I can add commentary to these numbers is a huge, huge thing, because we don't have the luxury of pulling people into a conference room anymore. They may or may not be in the office. They may be, 3-hour time zone difference or more. I think it takes KPIs to the next level. If I have a metric that matters, I really want it in a scorecard as opposed to just a standalone KPI on a report with no explanation.
I totally agree. Thank you for the answer, Treb. And our last question for the time being, some of the functionality you showed there looks like it would be really applicable to Gantt charts and project management tracking. Is there any functionality that allows us to do that within goals today?
There is not, because again, the goals feature is not strictly projects. That can be an aspect of it. And I have seen people who, like on their 3rd or 4th levels, will have projects in there. So you could have programs, you could have initiatives, you could have, in one case, what we had, it was a publicly traded company. The CEO had made 6 promises to Wall Street as to what they would deliver over the next fiscal year. That's what the top level of the goal scorecard is. And then each level gets broken down where maybe at level 4 or 5, you're talking about the project. But, these are all investments. These are all allocations of corporate resources. And it's at a higher level of discussion in those cases. But again, if I'm the PMO, I could totally set up a scorecard to do this. If I'm a project team, I'm doing Agile, for example, I could have my PI plan or my PI as a top level goal, then I could have my sprints underneath those. There's a Jira connector, so you could theoretically connect it to Jira. I haven't actually done this yet. I have a client who just asked me about this week. This is why it's top of mind for me. But they want to connect this to their Jira information. And so we would use Power Automate to feed the goals from there. So you could do it. Again, it's flexible enough for you to define, where am I having this conversation? What is the level of scorecard? And then how do I want to break it up? For the company in Canada, their individual scorecards are really related to individual development plans. So I mean, it's an HR type discussion, but it's totally able to handle that type of discussion. Make sense? Hopefully.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Treb. And just as you mentioned that, we did have one other question come in from an individual called Hum, and they ask, can you track each goal per owner or group of owners?
So that's a very good question. The way it's working now is you would designate who is the owner and who does the check-in does not necessarily have to be the same person. And that's where these permissions and roles come into play. So if I go into here to the add role, I can basically say, say Brian owns the goal, but Naomi's going to do the check-in, but only for these 3 goals. You can actually break it down, and Naomi may not even be an owner on the goal. They may not, they're just say the project manager, to refer to the earlier question. And this is the program manager or the business stakeholder that owns the goal because they own the outcome. So again, it's a different way of looking at this information, but using these roles, you can actually set up whether or not they can view it, can they update it, what aspect can they update? Do you want to just set this where going forward, so if I do select all for everything, they can see any new goal that gets added to the scorecard. Same thing, if I just do set for all, then they have all permissions. This is an evolving permissions model, so there's going to be more coming here. But again, it's really, they're trying not to dictate how you implement this. They're trying to give you the framework, and it's up to you to work through this. And this is, like I said initially, it's not the mechanics of goals that's the challenge. It's the design and how do I actually want to implement this is really the goal, the challenge of goals. And I would say start slow, start manually before you start building out a bunch of Power BI content, and test. Also be aware that the intent of this was for it to be publicly available. One of the tenets of OKRs, in fact, is everybody can see everybody's OKRs because we need that to coordinate with each other. Same thing here. They've given us the ability to lock it down somewhat, but it is there. You can also embed it in SharePoint. You can embed it in Teams. You can see it through the Power BI app there. So there's different ways to access this. You could even put it in a tab if you need to. And they're going to make this a bit easier, I think, over time through the share here. So we've got links, Teams, again, same functionality we have in reports. But the structure and whatnot, what you're tracking on here is really up to you as to how you want to do this. And I forgot to show you the drag here, but you can drag these around now. I'm so excited by this. So I can make hierarchies very easily. All right, other questions?
Nope, that's everything for now. Thank you very much, Treb.
Okay. All right. Well, like I said, if you haven't seen the Teams functionality, which is very hard to show when I'm in Teams, because let's see if I can make this work here. So I have a goals hub. In fact, one of the clients that we were working with, they actually they created a team within Teams. Gotta love the Microsoft Echo because everything's Teams, project. But they created a team to manage the audience for who can see these goals. And so in the channel here, they can actually have discussions outside the scorecard. But at the top, they basically have the tab. They have the various goal scorecards showing up. Of course, the one time I want to show it, it's not working. Let's try that one. Always have two. There we go. That one's working. Now this one, you see I've got more, so you can see how it resized itself. But again, this is very useful. So if I'm doing Agile, this might be a great way to visualize how we're doing. If I'm doing waterfall projects, I could use it for that as well, because it could be that I'm tracking key deliverables over the life of my projects. If you're doing it, depending on how you have your project structured, whether you're doing process focused or deliverable focused structures. If I'm doing operations, it could be these are the key metrics of, how are we doing? Are we clearing our queues every night? Or what's our average response time to requests? That kind of thing. There's a lot of good information that can be presented via Power BI goals. And yes, to reiterate, I really do think these are taking KPIs to the next level because you can have a much richer conversation around them. All right, let's see, we did Teams. So the only thing that I haven't shown you yet, and basically what we did, there was a lot of information that had been put out and scattered. So we did put together a get started with Power BI goals.com site. I realized a long URL, but part of why we did this is there was a number of blog posts on that the product team had done. Like, how do I embed this in SharePoint and Power BI embedded? How do I combine them, in the same Power BI app? How do I take them over? How do I copy a scorecard? So we went through and we aggregated all this into one place. We also have a massive number of series. Mike Carlo has a number of videos as well. So we said, you know what, let's just create one homepage for you to go and get to everything. And as things are being added, we're going to add them here. So if you're really serious about getting into goals, take a look at the site. Please give us feedback on how we can improve it. because a lot of people are just now seeing this. They've never heard of this before. It's the first time seeing it. We want to make sure that we have all the relevant information you need to get started and to be successful here. And we've talked to Microsoft about this, about having some other things. One of the other things that we're going to be adding is the theme updates. So if you use Power BI themes today, especially the JSON themes, there is JSON snippets available. I don't know if the documentation has come out, but we've tested it in the preview that we can actually incorporate your goal scorecard theming along with your report theming. I know we personally have like a 6,000 line JSON theme, and this is something we're going to be augmenting it with because we actually have every setting and every out-of-the-box visual set for our branding. So painful, but the results are amazing. All right, so again, check it out, and then we'll be adding more information to this over time. I know that there's more to come with this. The product is not in GA yet. We're still in public preview. Their roll-up is on the roadmap, so that is coming. And what was pushing that was one of the preview clients has a retail operation, and I think they said they had 16,000 locations, and they were setting up a goal per location. So I can't imagine how long it would take to set all of that up, but it's interesting. But again, they're tying that information to the reports. They're trying to automate that whole aggregation aspect. And when we get the roll-up, they're going to be the happiest campers in the world, because then they will actually be able to see how we're doing at the division level and the organizational level automatically from all their retail. So it's exciting stuff. And I think so there are upcoming major Microsoft events. There's Build, there's Inspire, and eventually Ignite. Look for announcements at each of those, as usual. And that's all I could say without breaking my NDA.
Excellent. Thank you very, very much, Treb. A fantastically informative session there on goals. And some of our community that are joining us today have mentioned that this is their first introduction to goals as well. Really? And I think that you've covered the topic in amazing detail and all aspects of it today. So thank you very much for that. To the community, we are just putting into the chat a feedback form. This is on the webinars as a whole to allow us to understand what sessions you would like from us in the future, and also what you did and didn't like about how we're currently conducting sessions. With that being said, Treb, we do have a couple more questions, but I'll just pass back over to you before going into those.
Okay. Well, go ahead and I'm just throwing this up. If you ever have questions about Power BI goals, you can reach out to hello@marqueeinsights.com. The email's there in the bottom corner. More than happy to help out with. If we don't know the answer, we're working directly with the development team on this, so I can reach out to them directly. The director of engineering for the product, we're basically talking every day, so I can ask him and say, where are we? What's coming? Is this something that's in the backlog already that we know about? Again, it's in preview. If there is ever a time where you wanted to have an impact on the direction of this product, that would be now, and we'd love to get your feedback as much as possible.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Treb. So we do have a question coming in from Richard, and Richard asks, how do you set up the change tracking aspect?
For the goal itself,
I believe so, yes.
So the tracking is actually done automatically for you. Of course, I clicked the wrong thing here. Go here. So if I'm in a scorecard, so let me go to good marathon prep here. Oh, there we go. So essentially, the check-in, I don't know if you've ever used SharePoint before, but in SharePoint, you have this ability to post a comment, but you can't edit after the fact. Or you can edit just your comment, but you can't really delete it. It just sort of creates this chain of custody of comments, if you will. And so this change aspect works the same. Now, one of the other things to be aware of with this is that if you want that time-phased view of how things are going, at the moment, you actually have to do that in your reporting itself. It's not done by the goal. The goal does not retain this information over time for your target and your actuals. It only does that if it's being manually entered. For data it's pulling from reports, it's dependent on the report to provide that. That's why when you connect, you have the option of connecting to a single point or to a series. And if you connect to a line chart that's in a time series, it'll pull in all of the time series values. So we're seeing some angst around that where people really do want, this type of trending. And now they've got to go back and do a little bit more work. So again, this is why I say start slow, determine what you need to do there before you make a huge investment, because it might be you're tracking either totally wrong data or totally something that's irrelevant or in a way that's not lending itself to being visualized this way. Hopefully that answers the question.
Perfect, Treb. I think it does. And just, I know we've got a couple of minutes left, so there aren't any other questions from the wider audience. But one question I would pose to you, if it's okay, Treb, is sure. What are the, and ideally it would be free, but what would you like to see from goals in the future? Well,
honestly, I don't like the interface. I think I understand why they did the rows, but I think, given where we're seeing adaptive cards come out, I think adaptive cards have been a much nicer way to look at this information. That's a personal preference thing. I do think that they need to do more around tracking non-qualitative or quantitative goals. So, because not everything's a number. Sometimes it's just, high, medium, low kind of things. So if I had, maybe risk ratings or something like that, I just need a way to track that. Right now, I can't do that. The other one that's out there is negative values are somewhat problematic. For example, we had one of our customer service organizations was saying, we wanted to track average wait time. And they had a metric, a goal of no more than X number of minutes. And they were doing really well that particular week, so the difference was negative. And what we wound up having to do is basically take an absolute value of it to do this. But then that sort of skews your goal a bit, because if I'm ahead by 2 minutes, but I'm behind 2 minutes, those are totally different situations. And so it makes it very hard to track those types of things. I'm hopeful they will do more around this. And then lastly, I want to see greater integration with Office, where maybe I don't need a Power BI model to connect to. I can just connect to Excel. And I don't know, that I'm hopeful this will come. I know they did the investment to automatically generate Power BI models over SharePoint list and over document libraries, but I can't connect to those from here at this point. Now, if I could do that, a lot of organizations use SharePoint list because they have small data problems that list and Excel spreadsheets solve very nicely, and sometimes not so nicely, but it would be helpful to be able to tie these in directly. I think that would really help this go forward very quickly.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that insight, Treb. Hopefully the future looks bright. Again, no NDA disclosures come in here, but from a goals perspective, as I mentioned, absolutely fantastic walkthrough. So thank you very much for joining us, sharing your knowledge with us today.
All right. Well, thank you for having me, and I look forward to hearing more questions and comments. Again, feel free to contact us, hello@marqueeinsights.com, and be more than happy to answer whatever questions you have.
Fantastic, thank you. And also thank you to everybody for joining us today as well. Obviously, you've been here with us at the Microsoft Power BI UK user group. Today's session was brought to you in association with Onyx Data, and we're hopefully back with you very soon with some more community-driven events to help you continue to learn on Microsoft Power BI. So thank you once again. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you've been here with us at the Microsoft Power BI UK user group. See you again and stay safe.